Hey guys, it's me, Minecraft World. Welcome to my dual review of Gamera Rebirth and Godzilla Minus One. This video has technically been in the works since September, though I've had it planned since last year. When Gamera Rebirth got first announced, I knew I was going to talk about it. Gamera as a character had been almost as prevalent as Godzilla has been in my life, and with three of the greatest examples that the genre had to offer, I figured I may as well give some recognition to his return after 17 very long years, and I was going to do that, and I knew I was going to do that. As well as that, I knew I was going to talk about Godzilla Minus One. This was the celebration, the early 70th anniversary celebration of the character that was going to be releasing on his 69th. Nice. But, I didn't know how I was going to talk about either one. I figured I may as well do a rambly review like I did to the Mario movie, which I'm kind of doing now. But it was right when I watched Gamera Rebirth for the first time was when I realized I think I might give this a bit more attention than the Mario movie did. I'm not doing that. I was originally going to write a script for this, and I decided against it. In fact, I struggled with figuring out how I was going to talk about Gamera Rebirth for months after it released. I've seen the show 4 times, and am currently going through a 5th rewatch. So, yeah. While I was rewatching it, I continued to struggle how I was going to talk about it because I knew what I was going to talk about. I knew what I wanted to talk about and what I felt on the series as a whole. I just didn't know how. And then Godzilla Minus One released, and I figured, you know what? Why not kill 2 birds with 1 stone? Let's talk about Godzilla Minus One and Gamera Rebirth. So, yeah. I wanted to watch Godzilla Minus One a few times, as well as refresh myself on Gamera Rebirth before making this video. So, without further ado, let's talk about Gamera Rebirth and Godzilla Minus One. So, let's start off with the one that this review was originally intended for, Gamera Rebirth. This was a kaiju anime released on September 7th, 2023, and directed by Hiroyuki Seshita of the Polygon Trilogy infamy. If you know me, if you talked with me on any of my social media sites about the Polygon Trilogy, or about Godzilla media in general, you will know that I have an absolute despisal for this. So him working on Gamera Rebirth was not exactly a big hope at the time. Though when the trailer started releasing, I knew, wait, this is going to be very different from the Polygon Trilogy. And lo and behold, it was. The Polygon Trilogy, first off, just going to put this out here, the Polygon Trilogy is among my least favorite pieces of Godzilla media. They scream missed potential with every frame that was done, and made Godzilla extremely boring in a way that Shin or even Singular Point didn't. It messed up the character and his mythos, which is hilarious because Singular Point, I would argue, is an even further departure, and that at least made use of the pieces that was given. So, while I can't attribute everything about the Polygon Trilogy to Hiroyuki Seshita, it's that association that really put me off from the guy. So, Gamera Rebirth, then, is the exact opposite of the Polygon Trilogy. If anything, I think this is what the Polygon Trilogy really should have been. Hiroyuki Seshita has said that he was a massive kaiju fan. He is a massive kaiju fan. And he was very heavily restricted with the Polygon Trilogy, whereas he was given a lot more creative control, similar to what Shusuke Kaneko said in relation to the Heisei Trilogy and GMK. So, and it is showing. Gamera Rebirth is an absolutely phenomenal series. It's it's brimming with love for the source material and the genre it's a part of, and is a perfect comeback, well, near perfect comeback for the character. Obviously, it's nowhere near as good as the Heisei trilogy. Far from it. There are very few movies that I would say would rival or even top the Heisei trilogy. We'll get to that. Um, but I knew for a fact that this show wasn't going to be on the same level as the Heisei trilogy, and it wasn't. Far from it. It still has a lot of noticeable flaws. However, I will say this show is very similar to Gamera the Brave in terms of tone and general atmosphere, which is neither benefit nor compliment. I think a lot of kaiju properties can mirror others, um, and do it well, and this show certainly does it well. First off, the human characters. Just getting that out of the way because, well, they're not exactly the best human characters in the kaiju genre, but they are good. They're good. The child actors are really good. I watched it dubbed, and the dub is surprisingly well done. Um, but the characters themselves are really well written. Boko, our main character, is honestly a really, really interesting character, like a really fun character. He's very like understandable and relatable when it comes to how he acts, though not as relatable as his best friend Joe, who is a better executed version of Haruo, though that is a very low bar to pull. Um, but his reasoning for pretty much everything is very different to Haruo, and I am really, really happy with that. The character himself just comes across as really nice. Junichi, well, they're honestly pretty fun. Um, and like I don't have much to talk about with Junichi, but you get a really good sense of their character, and they're honestly endearing whenever they're on screen. Brody's my favorite character in this entire series. He starts off as the American racist, which on the surface sounds really bad. And then episode 1 is a perfect humbling moment for him. Like, legitimately, episode 1 has just one of the most satisfying, you deserve this moments I've ever seen, and it is glorious. And then episode 2 just made the character more and more interesting. He's honestly, like, he's a completely understandable character. You completely get where he's coming from. He's the bully turned hero, and he's the bully turned friend, and it's a really, really it's a really, really fun story. Honestly, all of the kids in this show are just really good. They're just really good. They're well done. They're well written. They're acted. As well as the adult characters. Mr. Tasaki is honestly a really fun character. He's the funniest character of the lot, but that's really not saying much. But you also really get an appreciation for his character, and he has a growing arc where he learns to care about the kids. And of course, oh frick, I forgot her name. But yeah, I forgot her name. But yeah, the main villain. Yeah, the main villain's also well done. In fact, moving on, the story is just it's really, really good. The story feels a lot like the Showa era, honestly, which is not a detriment. I think the Showa era stories, like, yeah, they're not great, but they're also kind of fun. Like, they're also kind of fun stories. They're not the best acted. They're not even great movies, but like the stories themselves are just not terrible. If anything, I think Gamera absolutely shines when it comes to the goofier stories. It also shines with the serious stories, but this story is very much a balance of the two. Tonally, it's the Brave, but in terms of story, it's the Showa era, and I think that's a really good benefit. Each episode, it gives off a similar feeling to Ultraman with that Showa era Gamera feel, where you focus a lot more on the human characters, which are very enjoyable, but then once Gamera shows up, that's when the story really kicks in, and oh dear lord, does Gamera deliver. The character design himself and the character is just wonderfully told. It's a perfect balance between the goofiness of the Showa era, the aggressiveness of the Heisei era, and the general protectiveness of the Brave. And I think that's a really, really big benefit. Gamera Rebirth as a whole benefits from combining aspects of all three eras into one, and I think that's just great. It helps one pay homage to the past as well as recognize why fans love the character and take the character in a way that the fans would enjoy. And Gamera here is just that. For one, he looks magnificent. He looks utterly magnificent. This is what I imagine a MonsterVerse or a modern day Gamera would look like. Minus the color scheme, but even with that, I don't hate the green color scheme. It actually suits him really, really well. It's a turtle. But it's not just Gamera that benefits from this update. Every single kaiju that he fights in this show is just really well designed. Gyaos feels like a dragon. It looks like the design doesn't even look like it has skin. He feels emaciated, like a dragon with a Wendigo syndrome. And it's freaking amazing. I love this Gyaos. This is the scariest the character's ever been, honestly. This is the scariest version of Gyaos to ever exist. And yeah, Jiger is my least favorite kaiju in this show. She's not my least favorite kaiju in Gamera history, but she's still my least favorite kaiju in the show. It's not 100% updated, but that's expected because the kaiju are very, very different in origin. If anything, they're more akin to the Heisei era's origin. But yeah, Jiger's my least favorite here. She's not the most interesting, but she's still well done, I think. And each kaiju really understands the aggressiveness, most prominently with Zigra. When I first learned that Zigra was going to be in the show, I straight up cheered. Zigra is my second favorite Showa kaiju behind Gyaos, mainly because, it's a shark. It's a shark, and they do something interesting with it. And yeah, the movie itself isn't the great. If anything, it's on the worst end of the Showa era. I enjoyed every single one of the Showa era films except for Super Monster, but that's not a hot take at all. Well, okay, it probably is, but eh. But Zigra as a character, I just really enjoy, and he was done well here. Of course, very, very different origin compared to his source material, but that's not a detriment nor a benefit. I think kaiju can be allowed to change. I'm willing to accept that. Same with Guiron. Guiron is also really well done. In fact, he's the most personality-ridden kaiju aside from Gamera himself. The way he moves, you really get a sense of what this character is. You really, really, really understand what makes Guiron a threat, and this version does the necessary touch-ups. It makes him feel like an actual danger. Similar, kind of. Well, okay, he wasn't really that big of a danger in his debut movie, but he was still a bit of a danger with the head knife, and this show really understands why. Also, that knife feels real sharp. In the original source material, it just felt like a blunt stick in the shape of a knife, but it didn't really feel sharp. Here, yeah, this feels like a straight up dagger, or a katana, and I think we're on benefits from that. And finally, Viras, my least favorite of Gamera's Rogues Gallery. Viras, in his introductory film, just did not interest me. I do not care for Viras at all. He's nothing. Zigra does the concept much better, I feel, and, plus, it's just a squid. It feels like a squid. He feels like a worse executed version of Zigra. The movie is not terrible. It's better than Zigra's movie, but ironically, I hate Viras more. It's just not interesting. This one made him actually interesting and actually made him scary. For one, he's smart. I didn't get that feeling from Gamera vs. Viras from his debut movie. I didn't get that feeling from Viras, which kind of sucks because cephalopods are really, really smart. But here, you actually understand what makes him scary, and you actually understand every single thought that goes through his head. He feels like an actually menacing threat compared to Jiger or Gauss. He feels like an actual danger that can and probably would kill Gamera. So yeah, and all the kaiju are just really, really well done. My least favorite was Jiger, but like that's due to some implications. Jiger, I think, in her source material was really, really well done and actually one of my favorites of Gamera's Rogues Gallery as well, because because it's completely understandable. This is actually one of the most sympathetic kaiju you could get, but it's also kind of funny. um, so yeah, every single kaiju in Rebirth is done really, really well. I enjoyed them. I also enjoyed the kaiju action. Oh dear lord, the kaiju action is really where Rebirth shines. Yeah, the story is good and the characters are serviceable at worst and enjoyable at best. But the action the action in this show is ripped straight out of the Brave and the Heisei trilogy. This combines every single aspect that I love about Gamera's fight scenes. The over-the-top nature of the Showa era, as displayed in Zegra's fight and Jiger's fight. The absolute intensity, as displayed in Guiron's fight and somewhat in the final battle. And the just general excitement as displayed in Gallus' fight and Varys' fight, which is just absolutely brimming. The Varys fight reminded me a lot of the Legion fight from the final battle against Legion from from Gamera 2, Advent of Legion. And it's just so good. The action, every single kaiju moves in a way that they've never done before. This show does exactly what the Godzilla animes couldn't, and takes advantage of the fact that it's animation. It understands the scope and scale, and understands that it can get away with it, but it also understands the movement. They can get away with things that Suitmation or even CGI wouldn't be able to do. And it works so well. Every single kaiju is given an expressive moment, and at least one dedicated scene to understand what's going on inside their head, and it just works. Every single kaiju fights uniquely, and it's just, it makes so much sense, and it just works so well. You have a clear understanding of how each kaiju fights and how Gamera is going to respond to it, and every single fight is in almost every way distinct because of it. There's a difference between the Gallus fight in the first episode and the Guiron fight in the fourth, and I love that. Every single battle has its own distinctness. Yeah, they're a little short, but it's still really, but you still get a sense of satisfaction whenever they're on screen, and when you're watching them, they feel longer than they actually are. And that's what I love about them. So yeah, that's my positives for Gamera Rebirth. Is it perfect? Absolutely not. I do think it is really, really weirdly paced. I think the kaiju action should have gone on for a little longer. Because they do feel a little short. I could really feel the runtime with the Virus fight. But I do feel like they should have been shorter. And the animation, I got used to it by episode 2, but even I can recognize that there are definitely touch-ups that were needed. I think, had they gotten maybe the guys behind Pacific Rim the Black, or even Godzilla Singular Point, that would have been perfect. That would have been fantastic, because, look, the kaiju are fine. I actually really don't hate the kaiju in the animation style, but the humans are really, really weird. It takes a while to get used to them. Well, for some people. I got used to them by episode 2. And even then, the story and kaiju action were enough to keep me invested, as well as the characters themselves. But I still feel like it would have benefited from a few touch-ups. So, all in all, what did I think of Gamera Rebirth? I loved it. I absolutely loved it. This is a well worthy comeback to the character himself. This is a fantastic return after 17 very long years of absence. I couldn't be happier. This is almost everything I could have asked for. If it had a better animation style and was paced a little bit better, I would have enjoyed it more than I actually did. But having watched it 4 times and giving it some leniency, I still think this is one of the best kaiju anime in existence, and probably one of the best that we're going to get for a while. I haven't watched that many kaiju anime. Very excited for kaiju number 8 though. Been reading the manga, but yeah. But yeah, I'm really hoping for a second season. And if you do a second season, please, for the love of God, bring in Gara Sharp. Dude needs to show up in a proper series or movie. I don't care. I want the giant snake. 8.7 out of 10. So, how does Godzilla -1 compare? Look, Gamera Rebirth was great, and it was on track with becoming my favorite kaiju property this year. This right here blows Gamera Rebirth out of the water. Where do I start? So -1 is the 69th celebration / early 70th anniversary celebration of Godzilla, my favorite fictional character. And oh dear Lord, is it a very worthy celebration. This movie is intended to go back to the roots of Godzilla himself, to where it all began, and homage that. And Pylord doesn't deliver. So the characters. Let's start off with the characters. These are the best human characters in any Godzilla film, and probably some of the best human characters in the kaiju genre. Legitimately, these are up there with the human characters of Pacific Rim and the Heisei Gamera trilogy for me. Every single human character that is given a name is either interesting, fun, you like them, or they play a very significant role in the story. Or more than one of the above, sometimes all of the above. And, like, the main character is Koichi Shikishima, who is a failed kamikaze pilot that returns home after a scarring incident. And has to deal with that. And you really get a sense of how much said event scarred him. I'm trying to be as spoiler-free as possible for those who haven't seen the movie. If you have seen the movie, yeah. This applies to both. Please leave spoilers out of here or, like, post them somewhere else. But yeah. Shikishima is legitimately a harrowing character. You really understand where he's coming from, and you really get the sense of every single emotion that he feels. You really understand why he feels said emotions and why he's as broken of a man as he is, as well as really understanding his story and his found family, as well as his found co-workers. Shikishima is just awesome. Same with his, found family, Noriko and Akiko. Both of those characters are just really well written. Noriko, you really get invested in with her story, and Akiko is heartbreaking. I feel so sorry for this little girl. And then you get the boatman, Doc. What the hell was his name? Keto? I'm just calling him Doc. Even I know it's demeaning to him, but I'm just calling him, Keto. I know I said it was going to be spoiler free, but like, I can't talk about the characters without spoiling. But Doc, Kid, and the Captain are just all really fun characters that you really get a sense of just how they've been affected by the war. and some haven't. And like that's not all the named characters, but a lot of the major ones that come to mind. And like they all just have that sense of enjoyment. Again, this is the best human cast in any Godzilla movie, and one of the best human casts of any kaiju movie. And that's not even touching on the story. The story is legitimately wow. It's both harrowing and uplifting. Really, it's homaging the 1954 film, but if anything, this is, in terms of story, almost the opposite. In terms of how it's portrayed, it's almost the opposite. It feels both like a modern retelling and a switch-up remake, something that's doing a different adaptation. And that's what I love about it. And one of the biggest factors about that is Godzilla himself. This is legitimately the scariest incarnation of the character. Every single time he was on screen, I was rooting against him. Let that sink in. The fact that they got me to root against my favorite fictional character, that says a lot. Godzilla in this movie feels like a legitimate threat. He's not evil. He's not fully portrayed as evil. He's not portrayed as sympathetic. Far from it. But he's not really evil, like in the same way that GMK or even Singular Point is. That's something that I see a lot of people saying. He's not evil. He's vengeful. I think vengeance can be a very gray thing. Or he's animalistic. He runs off territory. He attacks because people attack him. And this is the most animalistic portrayal of the character since the Monsterverse. Since Godzilla 2014 and King of the Monsters specifically. He feels like a living, breathing creature. And one that you should not mess with. And I love it. Plus, on top of that, his design is just a top 5. Like, this is a new top 5, probably 3rd place. This is probably 3rd place behind GMK and Monsterverse. Wow. Yeah, this Godzilla is he feels like a legitimate threat, and one that one should not mess with. Like, they got me to root against my favorite fictional character. That says something. What else do I say? -1. -1 is... Please watch it. Just go out and watch it. You probably heard the buzz about it being a favorite of 2023, and well-deservedly. The $15 million thing... Look, I shouldn't think that praise due to Japanese cultural context, but, still, that's impressive. Yeah, visually this thing beats out literally every single Marvel film that's been released over the past, 4 years? 3 years? 3 years? Because, I compare this, and then I compare MODOK from Quantumania. This makes me tense. MODOK makes me want to kill it with fire. But yeah, -1 is utterly amazing. What else? The OST. Yeah, this applies to both of them. The soundtracks for both are really, really good. I prefer -1's OST over them all. In fact, you know what? I'm just gonna come right out and say it. -1, upon first viewing, I've seen the movie thrice, but upon first viewing, beat Gamera 3, Revenge of Iris, as my 2nd favorite kaiju movie of all time, and beat A Quiet Place as my 4th favorite movie, period. I love this film. I love this film with every fiber of my being. And I really, really, really hope it gets more recognition. It's already getting a lot of recognition. You have no idea how satisfying it is to see a kaiju movie, let alone a Godzilla movie, be as beloved as this one is now. I don't want it to continue, because I think that will ruin what the Reiwa era is going for. as well as just ruin a lot of aspects of the film itself, specifically Godzilla's character. But I wouldn't mind if it continues. Same with awards. I don't want it. I don't really care if it wins an award. Frankly speaking, I know it won't. It's already nominated for VFX, but it's absolutely not going to win. I can tell you now. But it doesn't need one to be as good as it is. It doesn't need one to be as recognized as well as it is. And it's like, if this film doesn't win any awards, I'd be perfectly fine with that. If it does, I'd be okay with that. If anything, I'm cheering for it. But I don't want it to win. I really don't. I don't want it to continue. I don't want it to win anything. I think as a movie, -1 is fantastic. I think as a movie, -1 should be recognized on its own terms without any medals or trophies behind it. I think it should be just remembered as that. Yeah. I love -1. This is one of my favorite kaiju movies ever made, and one of the best examples that the genre has to offer. And that's not a title that I say that I give often. That's not a title that I want to give often. This is a legitimately fantastic film. I heavily, heavily recommend it. Yeah, please do watch it. Is it perfect? No, but it comes real close. Honestly, like, my only gripes with it are that some of the music was a little bit hard to hear. Some of the OST just works best with the film itself, but like, the OST itself is great. Some of the scenes were a little too loud at places, but I think that was the theater that I was in. It was specifically for first viewing. Upon second and third viewing, it didn't really bother me as much. And some of Godzilla's CGI, specifically during the Ginza attack and during the final battle, just felt really, really weird. But yeah, though it's counteracted by literally everything else. Like, I love this movie so much. I've said it earlier, but I love this movie with every fiber of my being. Please do yourself a favor and watch it if you have the opportunity. I pity everybody who can't, because here's hoping you guys who can't watch it get the opportunity to as soon as possible. It's amazing. It's absolutely amazing. So yeah, 9.8 out of 10. And that was my dual review of Godzilla -1 and Gamera Rebirth. I loved both of these, one better than the other, but both of these kaiju properties were utterly fantastic. I'm so happy with the kaiju renaissance that we're having, and I'm so happy with the reception that both of them have been getting. They both have some qualms, but I think both of these are really, really welcome. Gamera is an utterly fantastic return of one of the stars of the genre, and a magnificent comeback of one of my personal favorite fictional characters. And Godzilla -1 is one of my all-time favorite movies, and an absolutely outstanding celebration of my favorite fictional character and his legacy. I'm so, so happy with both of these properties. I'm so happy that both of these directors got to make what they wanted to make. And I'm really, really excited to see what the future has in store. Also, side tangent, I really don't mind New Empire. Godzilla as a character has been far more varied and far goofier than what that movie shows, from what the trailer is showing of that film. So, really, stop complaining. This isn't new for the character. Get used to it. But yeah, that's everything. Take care, guys. Peace!